Today's episode is brought to you by Growing for Market magazine. For 31 years, Growing for Market magazine has been the source of practical ideas and information for direct market vegetable and flower growers. All articles are written by farmers who get their hands dirty and know what they're doing. If you do farmers markets, CSA, farm stand, pick your own, florist sales, or wholesaling, whether you're a commercial grower or want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market for the nitty-gritty details of growing, marketing, and the business of small farming. Available as paper magazine and a digital download with thousands of archived articles available. Use the coupon code WORM, that's WORM, to get 25% off any subscription at growingformarket.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by RIMOL Greenhouses.
Whether it's tomatoes to market, flowers in the spring, or your family's harvest, growing in a greenhouse protected from the weather provides the right environment that you need for a harvest that you can count on. RIMOL Greenhouses are designed for durability and offer the quality that you need to grow productively year-round. Visit RIMOLGreenhouses.com to get a quote today.
If I may editorialize for a second, I own a RIMOL tunnel. I love it. We built it ourselves, and I really appreciated the quality of the tunnel as well as the customer service we received in the process. So make sure to check them out. All right, let's jam. Hey, Who Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to the No-Till Market Garden Podcast, Episode 8, Season 4. As I've said many times, one of the primary focuses of the podcast this season is the South and tropical or semi-tropical farming. It is not exclusively that, obviously, but there is still so much to learn about farming where summers basically never end and where breaks from weeds and work are minimal. So in today's journey through the different types of warmer climates is to Winter Park, Florida, to chat with Mason Kuehn from Winter Park Urban Farm. It's a great interview, and we discuss all the logistics of managing different plots of land in an urban environment. With a quarter-acre spread over several lawns, Mason has to manage irrigation, washing and packing, moving loads of compost. It's a lot, especially considering Mason is also using the deep compost mulch system down there. And in that way, I also kind of ask the same question of Mason that I asked of Dawson last week. Does the dark nature of the compost in the heat of your climate have an impact on growth? Because I don't see that many people in the south of the United States embracing the deep compost mulch system that much. But anyway, I'll let you listen to those answers. Before we get going, I have to pull a little audible. The UK trip I've been talking about for the past few weeks has been postponed due to increasing COVID restrictions in the UK and the Oxford Real Farming Conference going virtual. Anyway, we will try and make up for that at some point this year, so please keep an ear out. We figured it was kind of a long shot anyway, so onward and upward, right? Stay positive. We'll still have plenty going on in 2022 to get excited about. If you love that we try and make this information free and accessible to anyone and everyone, and you're one of the over 10,000 people we estimate tune into this podcast every week, but not one of the 650 patrons who support it, consider signing up to be a patron at patreon.com/no-till-growers. There are discounts on merch like the hats, which I think are sold out or nearly sold out, but also books and future No-Till Growers events, but also at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs this week to Colin Hindy, Stephen Smith, Veggie Cropper, and Scott Snodgrass. Big thanks to everyone who supports our show in whatever way you can. We've had an amazing month on Patreon, and it's allowing us to slowly grow our work. But real quick, before the show, I also wanted to say that the tornadoes that came through Kentucky, we got a lot of messages and inquiries whether or not we were okay. Hannah and myself at Rough Draft Farmstead in central Kentucky, we were fine. It was very windy and wet, but our farm was not affected. It was definitely much to the south and west of us, where all of that really heartbreaking devastation was. Jackson, my partner, no-tillgrowers.com, and also the Collaborative Farming podcast host, was really close, though, in Bowling Green. Luckily, he and his family are safe. They may have lost some stuff, some farming stuff out of a storage unit, but other than that, they are safe. So we're very thankful for that. We are obviously really heartbroken, and it's been a huge tragedy in our state. So we are thinking very much about those people and always looking for ways to help them, and I hope you are as well. All right, enough from me. Let's get into this amazing show with Mason Kuehn of Winter Park Urban Farm. Mason Kuehn, welcome to the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here, Jesse.
And it's a pleasure to have you. Okay, so let's start with the rundown. Give us an idea of where you were located, acreage, and maybe because of your specific situation, the number of plots in cultivation right now and those sorts of things.
Yeah, so I'm the owner and the farmer at Winter Park Urban Farm. Farming on about a quarter acre in production, including pathways and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I guess the unique thing about my farm is I'm farming in a residential neighborhood, and I'm actually farming in other people's yards. So, yeah, I actually have five yards in production right now, and I have a couple more that I'm getting ready to start to put in production soon. So, yeah, I'm farming in Winter Park, which is in Central Florida, Zone 9B. For most of the listeners, they're probably familiar with Orlando. Winter Park's like probably 15 minutes north of Orlando. It's kind of like a suburb kind of area of it. Still pretty urban there. And yeah, I kind of just I started with 1 yard back in 2019 at this guy. His name is John Rife at his house. He actually founded Winter Park Urban Farm back in 2008. And yeah, back then he has a double lot, so he has like a house and then there's a lot next to it. And I guess they were originally gonna like build another house there and sell it, but instead he just like decided to rip out all the grass and just like start like an urban farm kind of thing back in 2008. And this was kind of back before like anyone was like really doing it in the area. He didn't really do it as a business. They did it more. He called it like a sweat equity CSA. Like him and like a couple neighbors would all come out and work on the farm together, and they would just like share the harvest and all that. And yeah, in 2018, I guess he just kind of ran out of time to do it. And yeah, I saw he posted on Facebook, and he was just like looking for someone to kind of like take over and just like help maintain the plot, and just so that like that space didn't go to waste. And yeah, I got connected with him, and he was kind of like, you know, you can do the same thing. You know, you can just grow produce and kind of share it with the neighbors and stuff like that, or you can try to start a business with it and try to do like a, you know, urban farm with it. So yeah, in the beginning, I kind of didn't really know where I wanted to go with it. I just kind of, started getting it ready, started planting things, didn't really have like any markets in place. He's connected in the restaurant industry and stuff like that. He actually owns this place is called East End Market. It's kind of like a food hub / food hall where there's like 6 different restaurants in there, a bunch of different like vendors. It's kind of like a permanent farmer's market kind of deal. And yeah, so he thought he might have like some inns in the restaurants to sell there and stuff like that, but none of it was really concrete. So yeah, just kind of started planting things out, getting it all going. And yeah, by the time the first harvest came around, I think we tried to sell the produce to some of the restaurants there, and they already had like existing like local farms they're buying from and stuff like that. So it didn't really work out too great in the beginning. So I ended up just out of necessity, just starting like a little CSA, just like 5-member CSA, just with like neighbors in the neighborhood. And yeah, just kind of started building it from there. Started doing like a little farmer's market kind of thing too. And yeah, the rest is kind of history. I just kind of been building it up over time. Like everyone in the neighborhood's been super supportive. Like I've had multiple different people just like offer up their yards, and it's kind of just grown organically over time until now with 5 and trying to grow more. So
that's great. I have so many questions about the just different things about how this works. Like one of the big questions that kind of came to mind is you have 5 yards and roughly a quarter acre in production. How far apart are these plots?
So they're all about like the farthest one is maybe 2 miles away. The first one I started on, the guy John Wright's house, his yard is the biggest. That one is that plot is probably about close to 4,000 square feet. So I consider that kind of like my main like headquarters spot. Like that's where I do like most of my processing, like washing, packaging, all that kind of stuff. So the furthest one from there is probably like 2 miles away, maybe like 10 minutes. And the other 3 are all in the same neighborhood. So they're all like only a couple minutes away, less than a mile away. So ideally down the road, like I'd like to just like kind of consolidate them more and make them all kind of more centralized because one of my biggest costs is just like fuel and then my time just like driving around.
Yeah, that was kind of one of my questions was like, I guess, do you have like a central place for tools and your plant starts, or are you kind of strategically setting each place up to have a little bit of each of those things, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so it's kind of it kind of started all as a centralized thing at John's house. I originally just had like a little like really DIY greenhouse kind of thing for my plant starts. I just made it out of like a PVC greenhouse just with like Home Depot plastic, just like really cheap and like really, really bootstrapped. Like, and now I've kind of expanded it out more. I have one plot that's like the next street over. So I recently this summer just built a Farmer's Friend Caterpillar tunnel. So now I do all my plant starts there. I still do all the washing and packaging and stuff like that at the original plot. And for the longest time, I've been storing my produce just at that East End market I was telling you about, which has been really inconvenient. It's like 15 minutes from my farms. But yeah, I just didn't really have the funds to get a walk-in or anything like that. And John was really generous and just let me use like a couple of shelves in the walk-in cooler they have there for like the food hub. But yeah, I recently just got like a trailer that's like converted into a walk-in cooler. So that's supposed to arrive actually later this week. So I'm going to be storing that at the plot I was talking about with the Caterpillar tunnel. So it's all like still pretty centralized. Like those 2 houses are only like, they're literally like a minute apart, like maybe like 1,000, like, yeah, it's right around the corner. So it's still like pretty centralized, but I'm kind of just like, you're working with what I have. Luckily, like the second yard I got, the big one where I have the Caterpillar tunnel at, it has a shed, and John's house has a shed too. So I kind of store my tools in both of those areas. And yeah, it would definitely be ideal if I could get to the point where like all of those kind of different things were like the plant starts, the tool storage, wash pack station were all in one central area. But I've kind of just been like bootstrapping it so far and just kind of trying to build it up, and just making it work for now, kind of deal.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was thinking like, does it, you were talking about centralizing certain things. I'm curious about your harvest and your sort of wash pack situation when you're going to maybe that plot that's like 2 miles away. Is it all kind of getting harvested into a cooler? You're putting it in the back of the truck or the van and then driving it to the cool, like how does that, what's that setup look like?
Yeah, so I kind of plant the plots kind of strategically. So the one that's furthest away, that's kind of like my, that's like the plot where I have my tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers. I had like flowers there. So it's nothing that's really needs to be harvested like super quickly and then like like cool down really fast. I did have some interplants going on there with like bok choy and green onion, stuff like that. But since it's only 2 miles away, I can harvest it quickly. I usually try to harvest in the morning, and then I can just bring it back over to that my wash pack station, and just get on water quick, just to kind of cool it down. And I have to be smart with when I harvest. Like I have to really do a lot of my harvests in the morning and stuff like that. I can't really do a lot of afternoon harvest just because like a lot of the greens and like even root crops and stuff, like they'll start to wilt really fast. So I kind of just have to plan accordingly. And I don't really have any like coolers. I don't like put anything on ice immediately. I guess like down the road I could take like the walk-in cooler with me, since I just got the one that's like a trailer. And I could take that from plot to plot in the hotter times and like harvest and then just throw it right in there. That might be kind of a pain to do, but it could be an option in the hotter times of the year.
Right. And then are you going all summer?
No. So I actually farm until like the first week of July. And for the people that don't know, Florida, it's really hard to grow anything in the summertime. Most of the farmers around here, like they'll just cover crop in the summer. There's a few I know they'll like grow like eggplant, some hot peppers. You do like roselle, okra, sweet potatoes. You can plant in like May and then let them grow all through the summer. But I kind of just take that time just to take a breather in the hottest month of the year and kind of just give myself a break just through July. And then I start, all my plant starts up again like towards the end of July, and start to get things start rolling again. I do want to try to push it more through July in the future, just to have like those extra weeks of income. And I'm really inspired by like the work that like Ray Tyler at Rose Creek Farm is doing, like all of his summer lettuces and stuff like that. And he's saying he says he gets up in the hundreds and stuff like that in the summer. And we don't even like honestly even get that hot. We get in the 90s, mid 90s, stuff like that. We have a lot more humidity and the nighttime temperatures are a lot hotter. But I think there would be a huge market for more summer produce, just because like a lot of the other local farmers around, they take the summer off too. So I kind of do want to explore that a little bit more. It just takes a lot more. It seems like it takes like a lot more infrastructure to kind of pursue that, just with like all the shade cloth and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah. And one of the things that made me think about is irrigation. Like, is everything on timers? And because my thing always with farming where I don't live would be if I forgot to turn off the irrigation, or if I needed to turn it on and had to just go to that plot just for that job. Like, how's that work out?
Yeah, it's all on timers. Most of my irrigation is just hooked up to like a spigot, just running from like the city water. I just have like a little battery powered timer on there for each of my plots. So that can kind of be a pain, like in Florida, we get a lot of like sporadic rains and stuff like that, especially at like night. So it's always kind of like a race in the morning to like go out and pause all the timers, just if we get like a heavy rain or something like that. So that's definitely one of like the downsides of having like multiple plots. But it's all on timers. I used to like kind of not manage the irrigation as intensively and kind of just set it and forget it on the timers. But this season I've kind of been trying to be more involved with it and kind of like use my observation, looking at the plants and the soil to determine when I'm going to irrigate and stuff like that, and just be more observant of it. But I think it would be cool to maybe in the future, like look into, I know there's some like water or like rain detection timers and stuff like that, where it can like read how many inches of rain you get, and then it will like automatically shut off the timer based on like how many inches of rain it gets. So I think that could be a real benefit in the future for my plots, but it's probably more down the line just because it's probably expensive for those kinds of things. So
yeah, the little rain detection. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it may depend on the timer that you're using, but no, those are great. I think that's that would be a good investment for you. But are you also dealing with different soil types? I mean, I think of a lot of Florida is like sandy, but maybe, I don't know. What's your?
Yeah, it's super sandy. No, pretty much all the soil is the same. It's just like pretty much like beach sand. That one original plot I started at, the soil definitely had a bit more organic matter in it, just because like he had been farming it for 10 years, and he would add compost like pretty much every season. So that one was definitely like an advantage to have in the beginning, especially when I was like not as experienced in soil health and soil building and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, all my new plots are pretty much straight sand. So when I come in, I have to amend with like a lot of compost and, put down organic fertilizers and stuff like that, depending on soil tests and all that. But yeah, here it's pretty much like straight sand, very low organic matter. Our soil is really high in phosphorus here natively. So yeah, that kind of ties into the compost I have to use, just because like I don't want to use very nutrient rich compost just because of like how much phosphorus we have already. Like the phosphorus here like leaches really easily, so I have to be conscious of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then earlier you were mentioning, neighbors being pretty supportive and that sort of thing. Have you run into issues with neighbors being like, I mean, I know that urban farms can often run into issues of people not enjoying having an urban farm there. Is that much of an issue? Or
No, at least like not anyone telling it to me. At least I'm sure there's probably been like one or two people that have maybe like complained to the city or something like that. But yeah, like it's technically all legal according to the city. So in like 2019, our governor, Ron DeSantis, he's not like the best governor, in my opinion, but like he did pass this great law in 2019 that banned any local governments from putting ordinances in places to that prohibited people from putting a garden in their house front yard or back. So yeah, like pretty much the city like doesn't have any jurisdiction to tell me that I can't set up these gardens in people's yards. The only thing they said is that I can't sell the produce on site. Like I can't like set up a farm stand in someone's yard and turn that residential area into like a commercial area, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine that has there's a lot of reasons for that, but that would be pretty nice. I mean, being right in a city, but yeah, I can imagine a lot of reasons why you wouldn't want that. All right. So talk a little bit, if you would, about what getting these, like you kind of have this program where or this offer on your website where you kind of say, if you have a yard, contact me, we'll trade a CSA share for it. Can you kind of talk about that, how that sort of contract side of it works? And then maybe we can get in some technical details about how you actually flip over lawns.
Yeah. So it's pretty informal agreement. Like I don't like have like a set lease on any of the plots or anything like that. Yeah, it's not like a contract. It's really just kind of like a verbal agreement. They're like, yeah, you can use my yard. And I'm just like, okay, I'll give you, once it starts producing, I'll give you a free box of vegetables. And I try to like vet each of the people that like give me their yard space to like make sure that they're like really supportive of what I'm doing and that they're not going to like kind of just leave me high and dry after one season. A lot of the people that are like letting me use their space, they're really supportive of what I'm doing. And they're like really against like growing grass, like well manicured lawns and all that. Like I hate that. I hate those. So like Yeah, I'm yeah, luckily so far, like no one's like dropped me from using their space or anything like that. Maybe once that happens, I'll like do like a more formal kind of like MOU or something like that. It's kind of just like a contract, like a understanding contract, like saying like, hey, like you're not gonna kick me out of the space or whatever after a year. So yeah, it's pretty much all like pretty informal. I was kind of just as I was building the business. So I guess I'll backtrack a little bit. When I started the farm, I still had a full-time job. I was working at a medical cannabis greenhouse in a town like an hour away. And yeah, I got going there and like quickly realized that like I wouldn't be able to make a living just off of that 1/10 of an acre, 4,000 square foot lot. And yeah, I just kind of started looking for more yards, and I didn't really know like how to go about it. Like I didn't want to kind of just go door to door and like ask people like that. So yeah, I kind of just posted on social media. I was like, hey, like I'm looking for more space. These are the criteria. It has to be like a certain amount of square footage. It's got to have good sun, access to irrigation, and not treated with any pesticides or herbicides or synthetic fertilizers in like the past 2 years at least. And yeah, I kind of just like, yeah, threw it out there. I was like, hey, I'll give you a free CSA share each week. And yeah, it was kind of just like, you know, me searching for land out of necessity, and kind of just giving them that. I don't know if I'll keep it that model per se the whole time, just because certain yards are bigger than others, and at this time, like all the different homeowners are getting like the same amount of produce each week. So I think I might eventually tweak it to where like they could get a certain dollar amount of produce based on the square footage that they're like letting me use throughout time.
You mentioned there the irrigation, and you know, they have to have an access to irrigation situation there. Just before we move on to the bed to flipping over the lawns, how does that work out financially? Are you paying their water bill? Are they paying their water bill? Is it being measured somehow?
No. So that's the only cost that the homeowners cover is the cost of the irrigation. I'm not really measuring it per se. Like none of the homeowners have like come to me and said that like, hey, my bill has been like outrageously high this month or anything like that. So yeah, that's kind of like the only cost that the homeowner really has. Like I pay for all of the equipment to set up the irrigation, all the soil amendments, all that. Like they don't pay me to like do any of the like the work out there. So that's really the only cost that they cover to have me farm at their yard. So
interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's great that they cover that. Hey, you all, just jumping in here real quick to get a word from our show sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Tilth Soil. Tilth Soil, this Cleveland, Ohio-based company, is producing some of the highest quality soil mixes out there. That's why I included their work in my book and use their products on my farm. This is true. Tilth Soil makes composts and potting mixes approved for use in certified organic operations like my own. Their living compost is made from food waste they haul and compost themselves, and it is the cornerstone of all of their blends. Tilth Soils take regenerative and organic growing to a new level. For more information on their products, including bulk ordering and their nationwide shipping, visit www.tilthsoil.com. All right, back to the show. Talk us through a little bit of the actual bed, plot turnover. How do you approach that? What are your first steps?
Yeah. So, the process goes like, I'll talk about kind of just like the whole process. So usually how it goes is someone will reach out to me. They'll ask me if I want to farm at their yard, and I'll be like, okay, I got to come check it out, make sure it's the proper size, has is an ideal spot, all those kinds of things. And yeah, once I see that it's a good spot, you know, it has a lot of potential, the first thing I'll do is I'll call, it's called the 811 service. It's like call before you dig service, and make sure that there's no utility lines or like cable lines or sewer pipes or anything in the way, just before I go in with a tiller to take out the grass. And yeah, after that's done, I'll do a soil test first on it, just because with a lot of urban lots, apparently there's a high risk of heavy metal contamination. So I'll make sure to get the soil tested for heavy metals, make sure there's no like high levels of lead or arsenic or anything like that. And also do like a nutrient test to see, you know, how the soil is, pH or organic matter, and just like kind of the more important nutrients. The one I do, it tests for like 8 different nutrients. And then, yeah, after that, I'll do a initial first tillage on the plot. So, and then that's usually the only tillage I'll do. I'll till it once just to kind of remove any grass that's there and, you know, just aerate the soil a little bit. And then I'll usually, depending on how fast I want the plot in production, I'll usually tarp it with a silage tarp for about a month, or I'll just go in and kind of rake out the debris and you know, plant. Ideally, the best way, in my opinion, is to take the time to do the silage tarp, because then that really kills off anything and leaves you just with like a nice, perfect blank slate. And yeah, after that, I'll come through, I'll mark all the beds with little wooden stakes, measure it out just so that I can, you know, create nice, neat, straight rows. And then, yeah, after that, I'll come in, I'll put down a bunch of compost on the plot. Ideally, the best way I've found is definitely like the deep compost mulch, especially on a new plot. Just because like if any remaining weeds or grasses that might sprout up, they never like really make it through that thick layer of compost. And yeah, I've tried some other ways. Like I've done just like put down a smaller amount of compost, like 5-gallon bucket every 10 feet or so. That works as well. Definitely have a lot more weed pressure on that first go around. Yeah, after I amend the soil, either with the deep compost mulch or just like with other amendments and like a smaller amount of compost, I'll set up the irrigation and then get to planting.
I'm curious with the deep compost mulch, because this is something that we run into in the middle of the summer, and maybe it's not as big of a deal for you, depending on, you know, taking that hottest part of the summer off. But the heat on those deep compost mulch beds is really intense in the middle of the summer because they're dark. You know, for things like lettuce and greens like that. Have you run into that issue, or like how do you mitigate that? What are your thoughts on that?
I haven't experienced too much of an issue with that. I'm not farming in like the hottest time of the year, like in July. So that might, and in August, like I don't really have too much like in the field yet. Like a lot of it's just started in the nursery. So that might be why I don't experience that issue.
It also seems like some of your spots have a little bit of shade. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Most of my yards, they have at least like one tree that's like around it that kind of provides some sort of shade. So like none of the plots are like, there's one that like doesn't get that much shade. It gets a little bit from the house at parts of the day. So yeah, they're not all super ideal full sun, but that probably, you know, provides a benefit in a different way, you know, with cooling the soil and different parts of the day and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, is maybe that little bit of shade that you get maybe once a day for a little while helps to cool down that compost mulch. And also if the bed is covered,
Yeah.
Then it's generally nice and shady and it's not going to get that hot. But it's oftentimes for us, like we're planting in the middle of the summer. Like I don't see the one reason I think about this is like we don't see a lot of the deep compost mulch system very far south. Like I know that, my buddy Josh Satin uses it over there in North Carolina, and I know a few people over there, but like the further south you get, the less you see it. And I've always kind of wondered if the people that try it often run into that heat issue, but like you're down in, zone 9 and it's, intensely hot and humid there. So it's interesting. I didn't think about maybe the shade factor helps, or it could also be irrigation helps. I mean, that's a big part of it.
Yeah. I definitely like if when I irrigate, I do it like in the middle of the day, kind of just to cool it down and to make sure that like that water can evaporate, so I'm not having like increased disease pressure and stuff like that. I know some people started using the deep compost mulch a little bit. I know you interviewed Jordan Cooper from Sugar Top Farm.
Yep. Yeah.
I talked with him a little bit. I think he's kind of switched to maybe not a super deep compost mulch, but he's using like the compost spreader and doing like a pretty thick layer and then just like planting right into that.
Okay, good. Yeah.
So I think the bigger issue would be more of like erosion. So I have another friend who started kind of like a smaller micro farm, kind of like me. And he decided to do like a full deep compost mulch with like cardboard on the surface, like kind of how Josh does it. Just like straight cardboard on the surface, and then building the beds with compost and then wood chips. And yeah, we got like a really heavy rain in the fall last year, and it like kind of just washed out like a bunch of his crops and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like more of an issue. I've noticed that a little bit with mine too. Like if it's, like fresh arugula seeds or something popping up and there's a huge rain, the roots haven't gone deep enough to like kind of latch in the soil yet. So they're kind of just like in that compost. And if it washes away, then, it's kind of a bummer, but that's kind of like, I guess the trade-off of it's like, no system's perfect. So you might have more issues with washing out, but you're also going to have less pressure with weeds. So, you kind of just have to figure out the system that works for you. And yeah, I've really enjoyed the deep compost mulch over time, assuming that I'm using good high quality compost.
And I mean, do you feel like you are using good high quality compost? Like, do you have good access to compost there?
Yes. Yeah. So the first 2 seasons, I didn't really have access to the best compost. So a lot of the growers around here, they use a mushroom compost. It's like a giant commercial place that grows like button mushrooms and stuff like that. And I guess they take the spent substrate and they just compost it and they sell it to the public for like really cheap. Like I think it's like maybe like $5 a yard or something like that. And then you got to pay for delivery and all that. But like everyone, when I first started, like the company I worked for before, I worked for this nonprofit for a year before I started at this farm. And like they use that compost, like another farmer I talked to used that compost, like, and so I thought it was like good stuff. Like I don't have like a huge background in agriculture. I've been growing for like 4 years now. So I kind of thought it was good in the beginning. I was like, okay, cool. Like this is compost. This is like cheap. Like I've been hearing about compost all the time. Like, I kind of just started with using that. But, the person that opened my eyes, on that compost was actually Jordan Cooper from Sugar Top. I went to a workshop at his farm. He made me aware that the compost actually isn't organic compost. I guess they actually treat the spent substrate with like a synthetic urea that's high in nitrogen to help it like break down quicker and to kind of like, I guess like sterilize it or something like that.
Oh.
So I was super bummed to hear that. I was like, wow, I've been like putting this compost like all over and like, it's like not even like actually organic compost. It's not like anything that's gonna be like too detrimental to the farm, like if you get like herbicide contaminated compost or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was really not a good compost. Like you put it down and like you can burn crops if you like transplant right into it, like just because it's so high in nitrogen. So yeah, when I heard about that, I immediately stopped using that compost. I was really, really bummed about that. And then last season, I tried a different compost supplier. This guy I got referred to from a friend. I guess he sourced compost from people that would make it and infuse it with biochar. Like it was like 10% biochar, like 90% compost. It seemed like it was more of like kind of like a carbon-based compost, and that one worked pretty well. I didn't really like the biochar in it, honestly, just because it seemed like there was like a lot of ash in there. So when it would like rain a lot, the compost would get like almost kind of like goopy, and like, yeah, it would like get like really compacted a lot easier and stuff like that too if there was like heavy rains.
Interesting.
So, I mean, it worked, and it was kind of weird. It almost seemed like it had like sand in it too. Like it wasn't like straight compost. Like maybe it had been like mixed with something else. I don't really know, but it still worked. It did its job. You know, I used it as kind of like a mulch in place, and it worked. But then I found a compost supplier this year. It's a little bit further away. They're like an hour away or something like that. But they're like an OMRI certified compost producer. It's really good. Like carbon-based compost. They just take like landscaping waste and turn it into compost. So yeah, I started using that this season, and it's been amazing. The crops love it. You know, it's really, really nice. Breaks up in your hand really easily. You know, you can tell it's like really good compost. It doesn't have a smell, really bad smell to it or anything like that. But yeah, it is pricier. Like I pay close to like $60 a yard after delivery for it.
Wow,
so yeah, it's pretty expensive, but it is OMRI certified. So I like kind of having that like assurance, just because like when I went down this compost, like learning more about compost, like I learned more from like watching one of your episodes on your YouTube where you talk about like different types of compost and all that, like inoculating compost, like nutrient compost, and then just like carbon-based compost and stuff like that. I guess with compost, like a lot of them, if they're not organic certified, like a lot of them can use kind of like just about anything to compost, I guess. So they can use like bio waste, like bio sludge from like the sewer systems and stuff like that to like make it, or like just like a whole bunch of like, different things that you probably wouldn't want to put in your field, your organic vegetable field. So when I was looking around for compost, I was like, well, I could get a compost from someone who's like 30 minutes away, but I don't really they're not organic certified. So I don't really know like what they're using. And I was looking at one of the like local producers around too. And like, they said that they were like using like the bio sludge or like the biosolids from like sewer systems and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to go to them. So yeah, it was really great to find this new compost provider, and, you know, I don't mind like paying a little bit of a premium to know that like I'm putting something in the soil that's actually like benefiting the soil and is like good quality stuff. So
the finding a good compost, for the OMRI certification is important if you're organically certified, but it is also good to know that they follow some sort of guidelines. I know that they could probably still take in things that are somewhat contaminated, but generally speaking, it's nice to have some amount of assurance there. What about delivery? Like, where are they just dropping it on the street? Like, do you have any complications with like actually getting large loads of compost delivered?
Oh yeah, that has been a huge dilemma on the farm. So like every year, like I have this one little tiny corner in my main plot where I kind of get it dumped in, and like, yeah, every year, like I gotta convince the dump truck driver to like pull through like the driveway and like weasel his way in. Like there's like trees in the way, and they're like, "Am I gonna hit that tree?" I'm like, "No, like trust me, like they always make it. Just like do it." And like they do it and they make it through. But yeah, since I'm so limited on space and I'm trying to like take advantage of all the room I have, it's hard to find like a good solid spot just to store compost. And like that's one of the big reasons why I don't really use a lot of wood chips in the paths and stuff like that too, is just because like I don't really have like a good solid spot to get it dumped to where it wouldn't be like a huge eyesore. That was like one of the big issues when I was setting up my second plot, was I got a compost dump in the front yard. And this was like the only time that like I kind of had issues with neighbors. Like they were like, "Are you going to like move that soon?" And like all that. So yeah, that's definitely been a big problem. It would be really nice to have one plot that's kind of just devoted to, you know, like storing compost, making compost, storing wood chips, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, since I'm such like a bootstrap farm, I kind of just like, yeah, tuck it in where I can. So I kind of just have this big giant, like there's probably 15 yards left of compost that's just like sitting right next to my main farm plot, like 5 feet away from it.
And then when you need to take that compost, then you're driving like a truck or something, and you're filling the back of that truck and then driving that truck to where you need it?
I use 5-gallon buckets. So yeah, I usually just fill those. Like I know how many I'll need per bed, so I'll just fill it up like that way, just so it's kind of like easier to handle, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and in my first season, I actually didn't even have a pickup truck. I had just had like a sedan, and I would just like take 5-gallon buckets, fill the compost into like old potting soil bags. Like I'll backtrack a little bit. When I first started, like I wasn't doing the farming fully. Like I was doing garden installations and stuff like that too, at people's houses, just with raised beds and stuff like that, and like maintaining them for them just to make extra money, so I could get away from my full-time job. And so I always had like extra like soil bags and stuff laying around, just from like after the garden installations. So I would like literally just take those, like fill up a 5-gallon bucket with compost, like fill that bag, and then just like load up my sedan with like those bags. It was so bad. Like I was hauling all my tools, everything, like in this little Ford Fusion. Like, yeah. So after that first season, I was like, okay, I need to like get a truck and like invest in that. So yeah, now I just like load up, like my truck can fit like 25 5-gallon buckets. So it's about like a yard of compost, roughly, a little bit less. So yeah, I'm doing it all by that. It's definitely not the most glamorous. Like today I was out working, like I just flipped like 5 beds, had to haul like 30 buckets of compost to one of my plots. So it's a nice workout. It's not the most like efficient. It would be awesome to have like a compost spreader or something like that for the BCS. I don't have a BCS, but yeah, I dream of having that tool. So yeah, I'm just doing it all with 5-gallon buckets and moving it plot to plot that way.
Is it just you, or are you doing it on your own, or do you have help?
It is just, no, it's just me for now. I'm probably going to need to hire someone, in like the coming months, just with expanding, like the farm and all that. Last season I was like primarily just selling through a CSA, like fully, like I had a 45 member CSA. I was selling all my produce through there. And then, this season I didn't have as many people sign up, for the CSA. Unfortunately, I was planning on just like kind of scaling up the farm, just to be a CSA farm and kind of do like 60 or 70 members this year. I kind of just do like a salad CSA. So it's like a 5 to 7 different items, so like leafy greens, baby roots, root crops, microgreens, some fruiting crops thrown in there. yeah, like last season I was able to do the CSA, so it's kind of like, it was nice. Like I would be able to harvest and do all that. I wasn't having to do like as much marketing and things like that. So this season I didn't have as many people sign up. So I had to kind of transition to new markets. So this season I'm doing a lot more farmers markets, like in-person sales and stuff like that. So it's been a lot more time consuming. So yeah, I haven't had as much time to like open new plots and do as much field work as I'd like. So I'll definitely need to like probably hire someone in the next month or two, probably just part-time, just to help me so I can kind of work more on the business instead of like being, working in the business like all the time,
Yeah. Yeah. That's important. Are you feeling like, I mean, are you getting enough rest? Like, are you able to do all of that on your own without like way overdoing it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I've like burnt out or anything like that. Luckily, like I definitely try to prioritize like my self-care and stuff like that and make sure that like if I'm feeling, really overwhelmed, just to kind of like, to like slow down a little bit. At the end of the day, I have to make a certain amount of money to pay my bills. So it is a lot of work, and it's definitely becoming, really, really time consuming, especially this season with taking on more plots and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been kind of interesting to kind of find that balance of like work and life and like, yeah, making the farm more sustainable. But that's what I always turn back to is like, I don't need to like rush it and get it to like this perfect farm right away. Like it's hard not to like look at other people's farms, like all the amazing work like you're doing, like all the other people in the market garden space, and be like, wow, like I wish like I was there like now, because that would be awesome. But like yeah, so it's like I kind of just have to slow myself down sometimes just to like, make sure that I'm in it make sure that I know that I'm in it for the long haul, and that I'm gonna, be able to do this hopefully for the rest of my life. So yeah, I always keep that in the back of my mind, and I make sure that I'm not like overworking myself too much and like, yeah, getting to the point where I'm burning out.
Yeah, it takes years and years and years to really build a farm. We just moved our farm, and I've talked about this before, but it's like really, it's hard to do even with the experience. And it's going to take us years and years to develop our new plot. And it will be that way for most people. That's kind of just the nature of it. And it's, yeah, it will take time, but I think like if you keep working at it and don't let that sort of the comparison be the thief of your joy. Yeah, I think like that's a good place to start. I wanted to kind of end on a nerdy note. I want to hear a little. I know you've been doing some interplanting trials, and I'm wondering what your sort of first impressions are with that, and what you're doing, what you're working on.
Yeah, it's been going great. I've kind of just been interplanting more with kind of the more longer season crops, so like kale, tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, all that. Like, yeah, there's so much wasted space in between each plant, and since I'm on such a small scale, like I really need to take advantage of like all the room I have. So yeah, I've been really inspired by like the work you're doing. I've been seeing with all your interplant work, and like really inspired by I follow I think it's called Sage Hill Ranch Gardens.
Yeah.
Out in California. I think they were on your podcast.
Yeah, Spencer, they're doing great work.
Yeah. Like I love the interplanting he does with like lettuce and like green onions on like the edges of it. That's one I want to try more in the future. But yeah, anyways, the tomato, so this season I did for my cucumbers, I interplanted bok choy on the sides. I used a gritter, so that's been really nice for interplanting, just because I can I usually use the 3x gritter for those fruiting crops, and I can I use the middle row for the main fruiting crop, and then I'll use the outer 2 rows for the interplant crop. And it's been going great. Like I did the cucumbers and the bok choy. They did amazing. I did tomatoes with scallions interplanted. Those did awesome. Peppers with scallions interplanted. That was great. I did tomatoes interplanted with sweet alyssum. I was inspired by Daniel Mays at Frith Farm. I saw he did that to help attract hoverflies and I think a certain type of parasitic wasp. But yeah, I kind of like to push it more into the future. Like I feel like I didn't like pack it in as much as I could per se. Like I was doing I'd love to, instead of for the this season I did the tomatoes and the alyssum. That was like 1 row at a different plot, and that was by itself. And then I had like the scallions and tomatoes at a different plot, and those work great. But I'd love to kind of like merge those 2 together and maybe do the alyssum between the tomatoes and that main row, and then do scallions on the edges, just so it's kind of getting like a multi-purpose, and you're having more roots in the ground than you would than you'd normally have.
Yeah.
So it's been going awesome. I haven't noticed any like decrease in yield in the main fruiting crop for the most part. I try to plant something that's like kind of quicker. Like by the time you plant the bok choy, it's only 30 days until it's out. Same thing with the scallions for the most part. You can let them go a little bit longer. And yeah, I also like to do one I saw on Jared's Real Food Farm. I'll fill in the carrot gaps with lettuce. That's been a really good one to do too, just to make up for that space.
That one saved me so many times. I mean, more times than I'd like to admit, that I just have a bad carrot germination, or last year we got a little bit of washout, or this season on some heavy rain. And the having the lettuce on hand is just, it's a lifesaver sometimes.
Yeah, I want to experiment too more with putting like bok choy in instead of lettuce too, or maybe scallions as well, just because here we deal with a lot of root knot nematode issues.
Oh.
Yeah, so carrots are a big one that get kind of messed up by those. And yeah, green onions and most of the brassica family, they're not affected by root knot nematodes. So, yeah, I think filling those gaps with those might help a little bit with the nematode suppression. I think it definitely helped on my tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, all that too, because those crops are definitely susceptible to root knot nematodes. So I think having those interplants there maybe decrease some of the nematode populations around the tomatoes and cucumbers, possibly. Not guaranteed about that, because I definitely know some of the cucumbers I still had root knot nematode and stuff like that. But just an idea.
Yeah, I feel like I've come across, I mean, I know that alliums in general tend to ward off a lot of stuff. Like there's a lot of, there have been studies about how beneficial they are to plant green garlic, for instance, with your strawberries and stuff, and like actual legit studies on that. And I forget all the different diseases and pests and stuff they ward off. But yeah, alliums in general, they're kind of, they're a good companion. And I mean, green onions, I put them everywhere. That's a great, you can shove them just about anywhere and they'll for the most part do fine.
Yeah, I don't even devote like bed space to green onions anymore. Like I'll just like tuck them in like wherever I can around other crops, just because like, yeah, it seems like a waste of like bed space just to have 3 rows of scallions or whatever. I actually kind of want to experiment with doing like a main like 3 row scallions and then like doing like radishes in between those rows, like doing like a pretty heavy row, like with 7 rows of crops, like do the 3 scallions on like the gritter, like as the main crop, and then do radishes, like 4 rows of radishes, like around and in between those rows, to try to get like a quick crop out and then harvest the green onions after. I feel like that could be a potential good interplant.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why that wouldn't work. I don't know that I've tried that one specifically. Another thing you could try just to tighten your spacing a little bit is using the 4x gritter for your outside rows if you have the 4x, just because you could definitely get in, that 3x is giving you like 10 inches, I think, and the 4x is probably giving you like 8 inches. I think it's like 7.75 or something, I forget. But if you use that 4x, and that's what I usually do. I almost plant everything on the 4x except for a handful of crops. And then I just kind of use that, especially when it comes to those interplants. Like beets is a huge interplant for us, green onions, lettuces. We do a lot of lettuces and head lettuces, especially as interplants. We'll do head lettuces. But yeah, that could tighten your spacing a little bit better for the outside crops. And then you keep your inner crops at the same spacing. You can kind of you kind of have to fudge it a little bit or something, but yeah, you can figure that out. That's what we do, at least.
Yeah, I really want to try that 4x, the one that Sage Hill Ranch Gardens does, like the 4x lettuce, just with like it looks like he tucks the scallions like in between each lettuce or something like that, or maybe adds like an extra kind of row on the end. Yeah, I think like having tricks like that, definitely can help people who want to get into urban farming, like take advantage of smaller spaces and grow more food, without having to open up more land and cultivation. So
absolutely got to maximize that space for sure.
Definitely.
Well, Mason Kuehn, thank you so much for your time. This has been such a fun conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. I appreciate all the work you do with all your open source knowledge that you're giving to the small farming community. And yeah, it's really honored to be on this podcast. So thank you.
And honored to have you. You're welcome. All right. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure to follow Mason at WP Urban Farm. That's Winter Park Urban Farm on Instagram and all the places. We will hook it up with links in the show notes. Also, you can support our work at no-tillgrowers.com by picking up a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook. Proceeds from that sale at no-tillgrowers.com go to making you more free content. Hats are the same way, but they may very well be sold out by the time you hear this. But whenever you do see them, just know that buying a hat supports our freely available content. And of course, there's patreon.com/no-tillgrowers. That works too. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you're getting it and leave a review. But this week, all reviews must imagine a world in which neighbors complain when you don't have a garden in your front yard. See what I did there? Today's episode was brought to you in part by a grant from Southern SARE. Big thanks to Jackson Roulette for all of his help, Josh Satin, our theme music guru, Willie Breeding, and of course, my amazing wife, Hannah Crabtree, for everything that she does. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye.